This is the Self Storage Podcast, where we share the knowledge and skills from the industry's leading investors, developers, and operators to help you launch and grow your self-storage business. I'm your host, Scott Meyers, and over the past 16 years, we have acquired, developed, converted, and syndicated over 2 million square feet of self-storage nationwide with the help of my incredible team at selfstorageinvesting.com, who has helped thousands of people achieve greatness in self-storage. Hello, Storage Nation, and welcome back to the Self Storage Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Meyers, and this week's guest is Bob Diamond. Bob is a practicing real estate attorney and investor with over 20 years of experience in real estate law, investment, and development, and is the author of 3 books on real estate investing and an appearance on the Flip That House television show on TLC. Bob graduated from Villanova University with a degree in finance in 1987 and from Temple University School of Law in 1993. Now, during his career outside of real estate and law, Bob worked for Meridian Mortgage in their default and REO department, for Arthur Andersen and Coopers & Lybrand as a business consultant, and for the international law firm Cozen O'Connor as a real estate attorney. Bob has also been teaching real estate investing since 1999 and has a unique money-making concept in real estate by investing in tax sale overages. And on this episode, we do a deep dive on the importance of education and mentoring when starting out in real estate, and we share our stories over our 16 years as friends and mentors to thousands of real estate investors. So without further ado, please enjoy my wide-ranging conversation with my good friend, Bob Diamond. Bob Diamond, so good to catch up with you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Scott. Great to be here.
Well, Bob, I have given everyone a little bit of your background, which is very long and storied as well. And what I'd like you to do now is, fill us in a little bit on the gaps and get everyone up to speed with, what you're doing, what you've done over the past many, many decades in real estate and what you're doing now.
Sure. So I started a very long time ago, 1989 to be specific, in real estate, buying properties at tax sales of all things, fixing them up and reselling them. So that was kind of my business. Did a few rentals, but mostly fix and flip. Graduated from that into buying at mortgage foreclosure sales, and then mostly fix and flip, kept some for rentals. And then I had an unsuccessful foray into pre-foreclosure. So there I was talking to people who were facing foreclosure, but I wasn't good at it. And the reason I wasn't good at it, nothing wrong with the business, but I wasn't good because I would be talking to some poor down and out soul who was losing their house, was desperate for a solution. And I'm supposed to be offering them, 65% of what their house is worth. I didn't have the heart for it. So that was an unsuccessful foray for me. Not to criticize anybody else that does that, but it wasn't for me. I just wasn't, didn't feel good about that. Then I ended up doing some commercial development and vacation home development, and have been doing that and have a nice, portfolio of properties. And so it was kind of my path. And then in 2008, I, along with many other people in the real estate development business, really had a difficult time for a couple of years, because I had projects that were in the middle of development, condo conversions and things like that, that nothing was selling. And we're just sitting there with, burning our money on interest payments every month and nobody coming to look at properties. And I spent 3 or 4 years just digging out from under that, just renegotiating loan terms, extending loans with lenders, and just, eventually coming out okay. But boy, was it a lot of work. And I think I had a full head of hair back then before I started that. But after that, I had this nice sleek haircut that I have now. And so after coming out of that, I thought, I have a nice portfolio, like I got my rentals, but I want to find another way to work with real estate and people. And I found what I'm doing today, which is called overages. In summary, that's when you help people that have been through a foreclosure. So their house has been foreclosed either because of unpaid taxes or an unpaid mortgage. And then oftentimes, especially today, there's money that's left over because when they sell the property, they first pay off the debt, so the mortgage or the taxes. But when it sells for more than the mortgage or the taxes, then that extra money is available for the homeowner claim. So what we do is we contact the former homeowner and say, hey, Fred, so glad I got a hold of you. There's a refund that you can get, for a percentage. We will go and do the work, hopefully get the money. And if we do, get paid for that. If we don't, it doesn't cost you anything. It's called the overages or excess funds business. I really like it because it's that same down and out person, but now the house is gone and I'm not there to take their house for 60% of what it's worth. I'm there to help them get their money back, to advocate for them and get them a big windfall they never knew about. So that's why I'm playing the game these days. I still have my rentals and those are just paid off at this point and just do their thing, which I love. And I'd suggest everybody have that. but that's what I'm doing today. And I love what I do. I love the aspect of helping people, and especially helping those people that have really been, knocked to the ground financially, and then just offer them a hand up and significant money. And just for money wise, our average claim size is about $50,000. So on average, we're getting someone, after all expenses and everything, $30,000 to $40,000, which is great. That's, for someone who lost everything to now get a windfall of $30,000 or $40,000 is significant.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's cool. So that's what we do today. And it's interesting. We talk about real estate. I know we talked briefly about, the economy today. I just have a couple of things I'd love to share with people, based on a lot of years of experience in this. I'd be interested in your input.
Mm-hmm.
I think, first
Please.
of all, we are at the beginning, or maybe even the first 20% through a serious economic recession. How deep, I don't know, but serious. I think it's very serious. And I think right now, if you're in, say, the fix and flip business, I would stop buying properties. I would finish up what you're doing and flip your properties, but I would not be acquiring new things right now. And I'm sure you've heard this, Scott. There's a saying, don't catch falling knives in investing. And it means
100%.
that
Mm-hmm.
when assets are falling in value, don't try to catch them while they're falling, because it's a falling knife. Let it bounce on the floor and then go over and pick it up when it's safe to do so. We don't need to know in real estate the minute the market turns. We don't need to know, oh, today was the day it stopped going down and now it's going up. We don't need to be that precise. The market is inefficient in real estate. And so you can wait until you start to see, the prices coming up again, the days on market shortening, and you'll know that's the time to be back in. But right now I wouldn't be buying new things, because as much as you may think the prices have gone down as much as they're going to go down, that's not necessarily correct. I can tell you from experience, things can go down a lot further than you think, a lot quicker than you think. So, and just to give an idea of my opinion on what you look at, I think you look at two major statistics. One is the days on market, which in most MLS systems is abbreviated DOM. It's the time between when something is put on the market versus when it went under contract. If that's 45 days, you've got a balanced market, meaning prices aren't really going to be going up or going down. It's just a normal market priced about correctly. Once days on market goes above 45 days, like say it gets to 60 or 70 or 80 days, then you're very much in a buyer's market, because when it's taking sellers a long time to sell, they're going to start dropping prices. Mm-hmm. And if you see on the opposite side, if you see a very quick market, like average days on market, 15 days, you're in a very strong seller's market. And that's when you're going to see prices increasing. So you can look at that days on market indicator, and it's kind of a gauge to tell you what's the direction of the market. How's it selling in a week? Prices are going to go up. Or how's it selling in 60 days? They're going to go down. And you can use that as a good indicator. And also the second one I like to look at is the settled price versus the offering versus the initial asking price. So if you, in a balanced market, should be about a 6% differential, meaning if a place were listed for around easy numbers, $100,000, and it's settling at 94,000, you're in a balanced market. Again, prices aren't pressured up or down. When you see that number going like we saw, recently, prices, the settling is, 110% of asking price. Prices are going to go up because that's upward pressure on pricing, and you're going to see that. And so take a look at that thing. And if you see that, the settled price is, 15% lower than the asking price, you're in a declining market, because there's going to be downward pressures on prices. So those are the two stats I would look at if I were trying to, time the market to the degree that you can. I would, those two stats are the ones I would look at, and just let that be your guide. That'd be my take on that.
Sound advice, Bob. And, Bob, you and I have known each other for many, many years. And
yes.
My foray into real estate, the first rental house I bought was in '93. So you got me by 4 years, but we've been through a couple of recessions and heading into this one now. And both of us have shared stages at educational events, held our own events, and have been teaching people about our own respective areas of real estate for decades now. And here we are. I don't allow people on my stage. I don't allow people on the podcast to talk to Storage Nation unless they have a heart and a passion for teaching people, and that they're not going to steer them wrong. And I think we got maybe 3.5 minutes into this podcast, and there you launch into a masterclass, just providing value and helping people. And so that's once again, glad to be associated with you and glad to have you on the podcast as well. So I kind of thought, I wondered, I knew we talk about real estate on this podcast, but I want to chat about the education side of the business, if you will, because there are a number of folks that, well, if they're on a podcast, they're here to learn. And there's a whole lot of folks that are going to be, as we head into deeper, beyond 20% into this recession, there are going to be people that are displaced from their jobs, or they're going to maybe be challenged to have to go out and to find a side gig, or, to be able to get into real estate. And maybe that is that vacation rental or some of the other avenues, their first self-storage facility or a partnership in one. And they're going to, if they're smart, they're going to learn about the business before they just jump in or find a partner, find a mentor. And you and I have been at this long enough, and then this isn't a pitch for our respective education materials or resources, but I just want to have a candid conversation as to the reasons why, perhaps the heart behind, your reason to get into teaching about the business, and then, what people should be looking for as they are going out there and trying to navigate the landscape of education in real estate. Sure. And maybe some ground rules as to what they should be looking for to make sure that they don't get steered astray. So I'll let you open it up and take it from there.
Sure. This is a great question. So number one, I think whatever you're looking at doing should be something that really has a magnetic attraction to you. So I've actually been reading a book recently about raising an entrepreneur. And it turns out to be, I have 2 young children, so it's about raising kids. And one of the observations was that these phenomenally successful entrepreneurs, and they're profiling people that like started major kind of unicorn companies. So it's, how were those people raised? What did they learn? And one of the biggest thing was that they're doing something that they feel passionate about, that they feel engaged in doing, and they're really excited about doing. It's not just the money. They don't see something and say, oh, I can make a lot of money doing that, so I should do that. Instead, they pick something where they have a passion for whatever it is that they're actually doing. And I think that's a key to finding a business if you're interested in. First, find something that you can get excited about, that, your heart says yes, and your emotions say yes. And they say, all right, let me investigate this with my noggin, with my brains and my analytical part. But I think that's a necessary part. So I think that's the first screen is, do you really feel interested in this, or is it just the money? Because if it's just the money, it'll be too hard and you'll give up, I promise, if that's the point. It's not, you don't want to get into something just for the money, because there are so many different things you could do to make money. It's ridiculous. You could, build a dog walking service that's out, service 1,000 homes and make a fortune. If you're a dog person, I think that's a great idea. If you're not, I think it's a terrible idea. So I think that's the first test. And then when you're looking at people to teach you, I go by the rule that the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. So I would look at, for example, the way something is marketed. If it's marketed with like slick, shiny suits, a picture of some dude in front of a private jet that's probably not even his, that's one he rented. Maybe it is one that says, I don't know. But, shiny suits and too much, get rich quick, like, oh, you can get rich in 3 months doing this. There's no business I know of where you get rich in 3 months. I don't know of one. Maybe there's something, but I've never heard of it. Maybe it's called winning the lottery, but I don't think that's a business plan. I think you should look at it and don't get distracted by the dog and pony show, by some dude in front of a jet or a Lamborghini or something like that. That's just silly. Look at it and say, just does it make sense to me? Like, does whatever they're talking about make any sense at all to me? And it should. If it doesn't pass that, the way that scammers work is they distract you with like shiny baubles. Like, oh, you're going to make millions. You're going to have this jet. You're going to have a boat. You're going to have this. Look for someone where there's more substance behind it than that. That's number one. And assume the way they do anything is the way they do everything. So if someone promises you, hey, I'm going to show you X, Y, and Z on this webinar, and then they don't, I think it's a big red flag. I think someone that says, hey, I'm going to teach you X, Y, and Z, and they do teach you X, Y, and Z very well, plus they tell you about A, B, and C, and D, E, and F on top of that, that's a person you say, hey, this is an interesting person. They're actually giving me more value than they promised. And I think that person will continue giving more value than they promised. I think that, again, just assume people are going to be consistent. And I think, that's a good sign. I also think, like, when we run live events, we just teach and teach and teach. And like you, Scott, I don't have people at a live event. I don't have outside speakers. Like, we just do our thing because our promise is fulfillment and teaching. So that's what we do. And it doesn't occur to me to do anything else. If, however, you go into a live seminar and they promise to say, we're going to teach you how to buy houses at a foreclosure auction. And then you go there and they don't really teach you that. They sort of teach you about it, like working around the edges, but they don't teach you like actually how you could do it and what you could do. They don't meet their promise. Instead, it's like, oh, but now you got to sign up for the 3-day, intensive boot camp. I throw the flag, uncool, and I'm out. And, the way that people like that distract you is by, again, showing you the shiny things, showing you jets and Lamborghinis and things like that. You really want to work with someone who consistently, every time you interact with them, is really over delivering. It's like, wow, I didn't know I was going to learn that. That's so cool. And I think, to me, that's one of the big assumptions. And I would just test yourself. Did they deliver what they promised? And hopefully over deliver on what they promised. And then that's your person. I think if you combine that with, I have a passion for this particular thing. Like I think in, say, the fix and flip real estate business, my passion towards that was making this ugly rundown house beautiful. Like I got a kick out of that. I was like, look what I did. I made this place beautiful. It was a rundown, disgusting place. And now it's beautiful and someone's going to move into it and have a nice home. That's what I got excited about. But I think if whatever it is doesn't really grab you, look for something else. And
I would agree. Nope, go ahead.
I was going to go on a different topic. So yeah, I'll let you go because I was going to head off on it.
Yeah, so it's interesting, Bob. I love real estate, and for all the reasons that everybody loves real estate, it appreciates if you do the things that you just mentioned, and you create value by forcing the appreciation and value by improving something, and then provide a nice piece of property for somebody else to enjoy. It's physical. You can see it at the end of the day. You can leverage, to buy it with loans from the bank, and you can depreciate it as well. I mean, there's no other investment that allows you to do all three of those. And so that has been my passion for it. I didn't really care for the rental side of the real estate with the houses and the apartments, just because it was more management intensive, and I just like the kill. I like the hunt and the kill, and I didn't really want the management piece, the operations piece. That was not my gig, and that's why we moved into self-storage. And there's really nothing that is sexy and that sparks any passion in the self-storage business for myself, other than and not even the money as well. But it was a simple, predictable business model that I can replicate over and over again. And once you master that and understand the market analysis and the underwriting, behind it, then you could scale it and grow it. And that's what excited me more than anything, was just that. This was a model that I could master, and I can tweak, and I can continue to get better at it and do it better than my competition out there. So that became the bigger challenge. And so I'm not saying I disagree with something that you're passionate about, because there's really nothing sexy about metal boxes on concrete slabs. But what we could do from a business standpoint, using self-storage as a tool, but not like a Victorian house that you restore to get passionate about, that was where the passion lied for me. But you're right.
I would say, so I would take a little bit different slice on what you're thinking about. I think you're at heart a conservative engineer. And I think you like the setup of systems, set up a process, and have it produce predictable streams of income. So I'd say someone like that personality profile would be someone who values consistency, who values something that's scalable, which is just smart, but something you could, like, I set up these systems. I don't have to be the guy knocking on people's doors, sweeping out their apartment when they leave. So I think you're passionate about the production from that. It's like you might own a pencil factory, where you're like, hey, we just make pencils, so I don't think it's necessary. You have to be passionate about, like, hey, I've provided this watertight box that's safe for people to store their stuff. But I think you say, I look what I can build for my family. Look what I can build for, people that I work with, predictable, good salaried job. And I can build something, where I do work today and I benefit for a long time. That's what I would say. And I think you could probably plug in a number of different services. You could probably own car washes too, I would guess, and laundromats and things like that.
Yeah, they're fairly predictable, but those aren't attractive to me. However, as we're discussing this, Bob, I think one of the things that we talk about with our the folks that we work with, that we consult with, or that come through our academies, is along these same lines, and that is self-awareness. Understanding. Don't get caught up in the shiny suits and the Lambos and the private jets. If you're not passionate about it, and also if you're not cut out for it, if you're not made for it, you can't be somebody that you're not, because eventually you're going to get sick and tired of it, or you're never going to step up to the plate because you don't have the confidence or the skill set or the resources in order to do so. So I don't think I found self-storage. I think self-storage found me, and that was just through self-awareness. It's just like, I don't like tenants, toilets, and trash. I don't like having to kick people out. I was never good at being a landlord, even though we had management companies and property managers handling that. But all those pieces that I didn't like, those are the areas of the business that were failing or just not being optimized. And so I recognize in self-storage that, this really fits my skill set a little bit better. And that was just a completely better fit for me. And so, I guess one of the pieces I wanted to add on to your comments, Bob, were, if you're looking to follow somebody, it is somebody that helps you find those passions. Hopefully it is something that you are passionate about, but, long gone are the days, I think, now, even though maybe people are getting a little more slick about it. But if you want to look up what the slick and sleazy marketing looked like in the information space and real estate, go out, look up a Tom Vu video, VU.
Oh no.
You'll see, you'll
Tommy
see,
Boo.
you'll see slick and sleazy real estate marketing at its absolute worst. And today's world of social media transparency and actually referrals, long gone are the days where people are holding big checks. They're just whatever, fake checks and testimonials and all that jazz. So those are things that to stay away from. So let's look into, you talked about also, the folks that over deliver, those are the folks that you want to follow. And we've always taken that mindset, and I've always followed other folks that, the idea is behind it. If you're following somebody, a community or an individual, where they over deliver, what that means is, if they're producing a lot out for the good of the industry or for good of the niche or the asset class in real estate, in order to elevate it, that's the place where we come from as well. And yes, our events, we never had any other speakers selling anything else, because we want to teach them self-storage so that they go find deals and we can maybe partner or at least wholesale some of those opportunities. It didn't do me any good to bring in somebody who's teaching how to fix and flip. That is counterproductive for me to go, read 2 pages of my home study system at the beginning of the event, and then go up to my hotel room for 3 days. So to find those folks that are over delivering, you realize that if they're doing this much for free, or potentially for free, I imagine that once I begin to actually exchange some dollars for a home study system or to spend some money on coaching or an event, those are the folks that you want to follow if they're doing that from the beginning. So long as you recognize that truly is who they are and that they have a heart and a passion for teaching. So, what would you add on to that, Bob?
I think you're right. And I also think you want to look at whether they have a skill for teaching, meaning you actually can understand what they're saying. They're not looking to use, $10 words where a 50-cent word will work perfectly. Because sometimes people do that. They just want to show you how smart they are. And that's not productive for a teacher. So it's someone that you can understand, that when they explain something, like, oh, I get it, or at least you mostly get it. You may need some follow-up, but you mostly get it. And again, I think it's that thing. Assume the people are consistent, that if you're learning from them, what they're saying is resonating and making sense to you. I think that's your person. They're going to be consistent. People just are. I have this theory that people will show you who they are very early in a relationship. And this goes for anything from a romantic relationship to a friendship to a professional relationship. They will tell you very early. And then you either choose to, identify and accept that, say that's who they are, for good or bad, but this is not necessarily all bad. But sometimes if they do something that's, say, dishonest or deceitful, that's just your preview. And that's more of that is coming, and more of whatever is coming, more of good stuff is coming, or more bad stuff. And just trust your instinct on that. If you see someone and your instinct is, oh, look, I can learn from this man or this woman, and this is really great, you'll probably continue down that path. And just assume that consistency. So that's my theory on it anyways, that I know very early how someone is, that I can choose to ignore it if it's bad. And maybe I choose to ignore because I see a flashy, green Lamborghini behind them. I'm like, I want the Lamborghini. That's not, that's why it's there. It's to distract you.
Yeah.
That's the purpose of it. So just, look for those people that are good-hearted, that know how to teach. And then have something, oh, that's an interesting thing. I'd like to know about that. And
Hmm.
interesting is not just because it makes money. Interesting is because there's something more to it, something that makes sense to you about it. And Scott, I agree. Like self-storage is not like the sexy thing. Drive-by self-storage. That's my self-storage. That's, you know, like maybe not what you would be doing, but you could say, look,
Hmm.
that's my consistent money producing business that supports my family and myself in a great way and has a great
Hmm.
future.
Hmm.
That's sexy. To
Yeah.
me, that's sexy.
Agreed. It's the lifestyle.
Yeah, it's what it
So
provides. And you also, you
exactly.
benefit for a lifetime from the work you do today
Hmm.
with that.
That's that very strong and true statement, without a doubt. You also touched on another point, whereas you need to look through and behind what some of the folks out there are saying, and at the end of the day, many of the influencers out there, they're good salespeople as well, and they can certainly spin a situation, including their own story and their own history, in a positive way. And I've seen this done for good, and I've seen it done in ways that I think are I raise an eyebrow to, and that is, I come from a standpoint. It's interesting, Bob. At the end of our events, we have a survey, because I always want to get better. And I'll tell our folks, I'll say, it's great if you want to give us some kudos and put your name on it and point back to us. We love to hear that. A pat on the back is always good. Everybody loves to have some affirmations. I said, but I'd rather you give me, some constructive criticism, be nice about it, but give me some constructive criticism for me and my team in this event to get better for the people that are coming through, and leave your name off of it. That is more beneficial to me. And over and over and over again, people wanted to hear about, they want to hear about the failures. They want to hear about the pitfalls, the mistakes, the gotchas. And I think part of that is also, again, human nature. They're prone to avoid fear. We've talked for, three days, or 2 days and 7 hours about the positive side and the pros of self-storage and investing in real estate, but we haven't talked about the other side. And so it was years before we added a session in to talk about just that. And my fear was always that, well, if we put enough of those in front of them, then they'll get scared. Those folks in the room
Yeah.
that get scared, and they won't go and do it. Only to find out that over the years that, I guess we have an obligation to do that as well. We don't spend a ton of time on that, and we don't talk a lot about it. But once we begin also then raising private equity and bringing passive investors in, if we tell nothing but positive stories, one of these family office heads said, "Listen, I want to invest with somebody who's got some scar tissue." I think the
Yes.
comment was, and I've used this over and over again recently. He said, If I'm a private in the Army, I want to follow a general that's got a limp, because he knows what to look out for, and he's been battle tested. And so a long-winded way of saying, what's your take on, because there's other folks out there that will say, well, I never want to talk about the bad stuff. And by the way, as an educator, I have never had a failure, and I have never done this. And why would you ever want to
That's
go and
funny.
learn from somebody who's had all these failures? You should learn from me, because I've never made those mistakes. So I guess maybe give your take on that.
I would say that if you haven't any failures, you've never done anything. That would be my conclusion about that person. Or they were
Correct. You're
just in
not
the
doing
market
anything
when
at
it was,
scale.
they could have been in the market for a very short time when everything was on a tear. And that's possible to be successful and not know that you're just lucky. So there's you want to be with someone who's been in it a while. And like, I agree with you, has some scars, has some limps, has seen the bad times. The way we handle it in our events is we talk about the problems, and, I'll tell stories about, this is the problem. Sometimes that means the deal is dead. Sometimes it means it could be resurrected, but you got to do these things to get it going. And sometimes they're workarounds, and here are the workarounds for those things. And here are the ways not to get into trouble. And I would say with the real estate investing business, my number one rule that I used to fight with my students about it, because I did some teaching in that back in the day when I was doing it. I'd be like, you have to buy the place to fix and flip. Don't pay more than 65% of after repaired value minus fix up, period. And then they come back and say, oh, I can't find anything at that pricing, so I just bought something. And I'm like, how much did you pay for it? Well, I went out with a realtor and I think I got 15% off. It's great.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, congratulations, you're going to lose money, because
Yeah.
just to do the math, your carrying costs, your realtor's commissions on the way out, your inevitable cost overruns in construction, you're going to lose money. And hopefully that will be a learning lesson for you to just shop
Mm-hmm.
and negotiate until you get a deal that is actually a deal that you want.
Yeah,
And
but Bob, I got into a deal, and I'll make it up on the next one.
I'll lose money in every deal, but I'll make it up in volume. Is that what you're saying?
That's the excuse I hear when people make that same mistake, because I got into the business, I met my goal, and now I'll just make it up on the next one, even though I didn't adhere to your policy of 65%.
We try to, I found that the math doesn't always work for them, like just showing them the mathematical formulas. Some people do need to burn their hands to discover the pot is actually hot. They sometimes
Yep.
need that.
Mm-hmm.
So I just try to be like compassionate, but straightforward with them, saying, look, that's mathematically the only way you're going to do well in this is if the market happens to rise while you're doing it. But keep in mind, that's just getting lucky. And one of the biggest dangers is when you're lucky, thinking that you're skilled and then just doubling down. Because that's the danger. That's actually the danger of a rising market for people. They get into it and they've never seen anything but that. And they just don't know. And they think that they're skilled and they're not. I think one of the things is to be a good student. When you identify someone, like if I were learning about self-storage, I would go to you because I know you know what you're doing. We've known each other for years. And I would just listen to you. I would be a good student. I would not, like I might say, hey, Scott, I'm thinking of this might be a source, to go find some people. You might say, oh, I've never tried that, but
Mm-hmm.
that might make sense. Talk to people who've owned self-storage for 40 years or longer. Yeah, maybe that's, they want to retire and cash out. Whatever
Mm-hmm.
you'd say, whatever my idea. But I would listen, most importantly, because I'd say, look, if this guy is the guy who's been through it, who's built what I want to build, I would listen to him. And I think one of the problems as a teacher, you have students that, aren't good students. They're trying to be the smartest guy in the room.
Mm-hmm.
And in whatever they do, they can be a smart guy. Like we have doctors sometimes that come in and I just want to groan because I'm like, yes, you're brilliant. If I have a cardiological problem, I want to know all about your advice, but I don't want to know your advice about my overages business or my real estate.
Mm-hmm.
Unless
Mm-hmm.
you have some relevant experience. I don't want to hear about it. I don't care that you went to Harvard.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter.
Right.
Because it's not relevant. So
Mm-hmm.
I would say, put yourself in the shoes of being a good student. Think about something you know how to do well. Cooking Thanksgiving dinner, for example, very
Mm-hmm.
complicated. Get everything on at the same time. If someone said to you, hey, I want to learn how to, cook Thanksgiving dinner. I just got married. I want to, put on the Thanksgiving dinner. Could you help me? Yes. But can the student listen and, do it like, hey, get the turkey out. We got to get it defrosted.
Mm-hmm.
We're cooking it in 2 days, whatever it is. You got to be a good student.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, you select your teacher in the area that you want, look to see that they're consistent, but then follow the system. It also doesn't work. And maybe you've had this too, Scott. You have someone that's trying to do a hybrid, like your system and someone else's system,
Yeah.
and they're not quite compatible. Like the other one may
Right.
work great. Your thing
Mm-hmm.
works great, but when you stick the two together, maybe not so much.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, pick your horse and ride that horse.
Yeah.
Don't,
Mm-hmm.
pretend you're not smart if you have to. And
Yeah, I think people can't get out of their own head when they're doing that, when they're combining. And I think one of the areas that we've seen where we can help the most is that, Bob, you and I both come from a place where, we were kind of the pioneers early on in the real estate education side
yes,
of the business. And then with social media and just, the rise of the interwebs, there's a lot of information. And so we've seen an evolution for the past 20 years that we've been doing this. I feel where there was not a lot of information. And so you pick somebody to follow, as you mentioned, that, is in a niche that you're interested in. You somewhat connect with that person, or maybe they have the same background as you, and their journey is very similar to yours. And so you gravitate towards that person. And then we get to the place where there's, dozens of those types of peoples in the different asset classes, talking about roughly the same thing, but a little different twist here and there. And what we find now is that, where people are now confused. There is so much information out there. Now they're looking for, a Sherpa to, take them out of the clutter and up the mountain, and somebody who has the experience, who's done it before, who's seen a little bit more, and can really distill this information down. And, I shouldn't say all information, but, there are many, many good educators out there.
yes, I agree.
And various asset classes. Not all of them are great. And you should learn from as many of them as possible and pick up as much as possible. But eventually you're going to have to find, that one or two individuals, they're going to sift through all the clutter and be able to distill it down and really kind of vet that information and dispel some of the myths out there versus the truths, to guide you. There's a difference. There's a lot of information out there, and information, isn't always necessarily true. And information without the plan to execute, without execution behind it, is worthless. And especially if it's bad information. I've spent many hours refuting bad information on BiggerPockets and some of the other forums that some of the newbies and novices are dispelling regarding self-storage. And there's a difference between sending out a lot of information and grabbing videos out there and consuming it versus thoughtful mentoring, where you can download information, but thoughtful mentoring is something that you really need to have somebody come alongside of you and help with. So eventually you're going to have to still find that one person that is going to be able to help you get beyond, get out of your own mind and sift through all the clutter that's out there.
I so completely agree with you about that. And a lot of things, like I won't pick on BiggerPockets in particular, but generally that genre where you have a bunch of people of some unknown pedigree who are just spending their time commenting and opining on things. You're not going to find me doing that. I'm sure you're not going to find you doing that. Anybody who's really doing business has no time to be futzing around on BiggerPockets, giving free advice to people, who have no commitment, have shown no interest, and it's just wasting your time, as an educator side. So I would take anything you hear on those kind of forums with a big grain of salt, because there's some people whose hobby is just commenting and opining. And, you want someone who, like, just for example, you guys with self-storage, I'm sure, I don't know if you do this, but you have probably at some time, or for maybe ground tours, like, hey, come see our self-storage, we'll show you what these things look like. Like, your mentor should be able to do that. When I was doing it back in the day, when I was doing condo conversions and things like that, I had something called Real Streets, where it was a tour of a building that we had just bought, a tour of a building under construction, and a tour of a completed building. And I take people through and say, this is what a neighborhood looks like that we like. Here's what I like about it. Here's what I don't like. Here's, renovations. Here, we're going to have our contractor come in and give a talk about what he does. And, we would have, and then we'd show the finished product. To me, and I think to my students, it's like, that's a lot of credibility, because I'm showing 3 buildings I own. One just bought, untouched, one under construction, one finished. When you think about someone you're following, like that kind of, not just what they say, but what you can see is a big deal. I think it's a very big deal. The other thing that's hurting, Scott, and this is so different than when we started. When we started the business, there was some vetting that went on ahead of time. Like, if you're going to go speak at a RIA club or something, somebody knew something about you. And, my first speaking at a real estate investor club, which is what a RIA club is, those were people that I had joined the club like 10 years earlier and, come up sort of through the ranks. People know, oh, Bob knows what he's talking about. And then, 10 years later, there I am talking on the stage about what I'm doing. But I was a known quantity back then. That wasn't random. And, I think these days you just open up a free YouTube channel and start talking into into your cell phone, which you already own. So I think it's harder because there's nobody really doing any kind of vetting. And I think that's tough. And I think, again, use your listening skills. Are you actually learning something useful from this person? Like when I talk, like say on social media, which I don't do that much of, but when I do, like, I'm actually trying to give value. And I'm not trying to like distract you as a shiny object. I'm trying to give you value. I figure that when I see a person and I'm assessing, is this a smart person or not a smart person? I don't want a smart person to tell me how smart they are. I don't care that you went to, Harvard. I don't care. I do care that you may say something intelligent. Like you may say, hey, here's, I found opportunities in Indiana in real estate. Here's why, here's what I found. Here's what I'm saying. Oh, that's interesting. Like some insights, that to me is extremely interesting. And that's when I identify someone as smart, because I'm like, wow, that's a smart person saying something insightful or interesting about a topic I'm interested in. That's who I want to hear from and hear more from. And I would say, as you're listening to people, look for that. Don't look for someone to tell you how smart they are or show you their shiny object that they own. Instead, look for smart things coming out that are insightful, little twists on things like, oh, I never thought about it that way. And I'm sure like you'd have 100 of them. Like if I said to, hey, Scott, what kind of markets I want to get into self-storage today. What kind of markets should I look for? And what are sort of the factors I should be looking at? I'm
Mhm.
sure you'd have lots of things I say, oh, that's really smart. I'm sure of it, you
Yeah,
know?
the information should be time sensitive, and relevant. Any one of those, you call it a quote or a post, should be, here's what I learned today, or here's what I found today, or here's what's going on today, or here's what we did today. Because it's if it's worthy, we've been at this for a little while. It's worthy of sharing, not, hey, look at my, or look at me. Those are the ways the post and any of the information that should go out, which is, Eureka, I've been 30 years in the business, and here's what I learned today, and sharing that with the
Yeah,
community.
that's a good point. I know when I think about like self-storage, for example, I would think that, it's in my mind, a number one thing would probably be movers, like movers moving into that area is my guess.
Mhm,
I would guess that would
mhm,
be like, I'd be
mhm,
looking at what statistics does, U-Haul have about stuff coming in, or United Van Lines put out about people moving in, or are there jobs being created in that area? I'm guessing.
mhm,
But like I would look to you and I would say, what's Scott saying about this? And you might
mhm,
say, here are the top 5 things we look at in,
mhm.
evaluating a market. I would say, oh, those are either smart, clever things or not. I'd not be looking for Scott saying, hey, this is my family. We're on a 3-month all paid, free vacation to Egypt based on all this money I'm making in
Yeah.
self-storage. I'm asleep already,
Right.
when it's that. And I
Mhm,
would think for you out there looking for something, I think that's a good thing to look at. Like, what is this person? Is this person, like, obviously, like when I look at you, Scott, like you're in the business. I've known you for many years. You're in that business, you know, I want to say neck deep, but you're swimming in the depths, you're
yeah.
swimming 100
We are
feet under the
active
surface.
practitioners in the deep end.
Yes, you're in there and you're like, yeah, this worked, that didn't. And,
Mhm,
you have that depth of experience to draw on. That's the guy I want. And so if I identified,
mhm,
hey, I want to know about self-storage, it would be you. And I don't say that just because
mhm,
I'm on your podcast, that is the way it is. I would do that. Just like back in the day, if I were doing apartment buildings, I would have
mhm,
gone to Dave Lindahl
mhm,
back in the day when that
mhm,
was his passion. I would absolutely done that. The
mhm.
guy built up a huge portfolio with his partner, with like 7,000 apartment
Yeah.
buildings back in the
Yep.
early 2000s. So
Mhm,
that's a guy, like, he actually knows something useful, because if he did that, he knows something.
mhm.
Someone who just makes a YouTube channel, nah, I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I would listen to them, but I wouldn't be convinced that easily.
Yeah. Likes and subscribers doesn't equate to experience. That is for certain.
No. But I think you can evaluate if you listen, again, not getting distracted by shiny objects, but if you listen
Mhm,
and say, is this person saying smart, insightful things that make sense?
mhm. Yep.
That's where I think you identify your man or woman.
Mhm.
Um,
Well, Bob, our time is coming up to an end,
already?
and so it is. I know. Go figure. Well, I think we're due for round 2, so I will reach out for that. But for now, for the folks that are either actively searching for that person or those people, for a mentor or a Sherpa, any parting thoughts on maybe even a quick checklist, or what is the one thing that they should be focusing on right now to make sure that they are educated before they write that LOI or purchase offer?
Oh, geez. So you do want to, I think this is my opinion. I'm very much a fan of having an actual paid mentor. I know that's painful when you're first starting out, but you're either going to pay in the school of hard knocks, which
Hmm.
has very high tuition,
Hmm.
or you're going to pay someone to help you. And I would spend my time looking for the right person, someone that resonates with you, someone that you can understand, someone that explains things without using words you don't understand.
Hmm.
Um, and I would engage them in whatever form that takes, whatever coaching program or mentoring program they have. And I would invest my time and money in that before I started, borrowing money, putting out letters of
Hmm.
intent and buying properties. Because once you're in a real estate deal, you're in the deal. It's not
Hmm.
necessarily easy to liquidate. And, you don't want to be like the Californians, 15 years ago, who were all
Hmm.
convinced to buy lousy properties in Detroit because they were $5,000 a piece.
Hmm.
You don't want to be that guy. And, when you don't know anything, just know that you don't know anything. And so you aren't qualified to make decisions about it. Educate yourself first, and then you will be
Yeah.
very much qualified to make smart decisions, and your chance of success goes up exponentially when you treat it that way. I think
Hmm.
it's kind of like with houses. Like when I was talking to people that got tired of looking for houses, so they just went out with a realtor and bought something for what they think is 15% off. That's impatience, and that's impatience waiting to be a
Hmm.
lesson in lost money, which is what it will become.
Hmm. Hmm.
Don't be that person. Don't be the person that gets that very expensive education.
Yeah.
Instead, hire the person and follow them. Follow their systems. Don't like make your own system when you're a beginner. You get the right to make your own system when you get experience and you find some new things to do, but not when you haven't done anything yet. You aren't qualified
Yeah.
yet. You'll
That's a
get
good
there, but you're not
statement.
there yet.
Hmm. Well, surprise, surprise, two gentlemen who own education companies promoting paid mentoring. But I echo your same sentiments. And here's why. It's not without, decades of validation behind it. I paid for mentors in the beginning, and they kept me out of
Me too.
some doo-doo. They have kept me out of a lot of, mistakes that I would have made that would have cost me a whole lot of money. And
Yes.
and those are the folks, and those are the ones. I think it was Trump who coined the phrase, "And the art of the deal is some of the best mistakes are the ones that are most successful deals I've done are the ones that I never bought or something like that." In other words, the ones that would have taken them down. In hindsight, they saw that, ooh,
Yes.
the fact that I didn't buy that is the reason why I'm so successful, or even still in the business or not bankrupt. And there's value in somebody coming alongside of you and putting up the red light and saying, no, you can't, and you shouldn't do that, and here's the reasons why. And we've also seen
Yes.
people come back through, that we've worked with that, they've made some grave mistakes, and they've made one mistake in the beginning that became part of their process, like you just mentioned, Bob, and they've done it over and over and over again. And that same mistake done in their underwriting has cost them, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so, getting that system in place and having the person to show you how to do it from the beginning is so much more valuable. I've seen a number of case studies out there, on the interwebs and other places. And I look at that and I just think, oh my gosh, please don't share that anymore. Take it down, because here's mistakes 2, 3, 4, and 5 that you shouldn't have made. And now you're just teaching other people to
Right.
do that as well.
You're
Yeah.
qualified to teach that. And the
Mm-hmm.
typical person who's teaching that is someone who's only been in one market, like only in a rising market.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
they just don't know because they haven't been kicked yet
Yeah.
by that mistake. But they will
Mm-hmm.
be, because all
Yeah,
markets rise and fall.
I do.
It's a surety of life.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
the
my point
smartest,
is it's an insurance policy, and to your point, or just stated a different way, Bob, is that you're gonna learn either through the school of hard knocks, or you're gonna get an education, whether you pay for it up front or whether the market hands it to you. It's usually more expensive on the back end in the school of hard knocks, and what the market teaches you. A
yes.
$10,000 mistake in underwriting is a $100,000 mistake on the street. So just look at it as an extra insurance policy, I guess, is what I would leave it with. So, Bob, with that, how do people get in touch with you? And let's talk a little bit about overages and some of the
Okay.
resources that people have, because we've been privy to that. We didn't touch on that as much as I would have liked to have. You and I've been we've been talking about that for years, and you've introduced that to our community, and several folks have been very successful with that as well. So let's talk about overages and other ways that people can get in touch with
Let
you.
me give you the 2 minute, because I
Mm-hmm.
I actually do coaching for Harvard Business School.
Mm-hmm.
Braggy, I know, but that's what I do. And I have to do that in 2 minutes. I have my, I coach for their startup program. So
Mm-hmm.
I have people waiting for me. So overage is essentially the business of when someone loses a property at tax sale or mortgage foreclosure sale. Often the property sells for far more than the taxes or far more than the mortgage, especially with the uprise in prices. So that leaves a pool of money that's not needed to satisfy the mortgage or the taxes. That money can be claimed by the former owner. They have no idea about that. It's not anything that is common knowledge. People know. So what we do is we get their lists, like public record lists of the money that's left over.
Mm-hmm.
We get those lists. We do something called skip tracing, which is how you find people that, find their good contact information. We skip trace them. We go and contact them and say, hey, Scott, so glad I got a hold of you. You actually had a really sizable refund. I'd like to talk to you. Our company goes and helps people get those refunds. And for a percentage, we'll go do the work, put up any costs that are necessary. And if we're successful, you'll get a windfall. We'll get paid. If not, it won't cost you anything. It's the essential offer. work through whatever skepticism they have, which they will always have. And then we go and get the money. So we have a business where we do that. We typically are doing about 70 claims at a time. Right now we have $4 million of claims under contract. So we're working through those. Take us 4 or 5 months to work through them. And it's a continual flow of deals we're doing. And if that's of interest to you, I think that the kind of person this is right for, someone who really gets jazzed up by helping people. You're helping people who've been really kicked hard by the loss of their property to taxes or mortgage. And it's a great business for people that want to make great money, but also really have a heart for helping people. And if you want to hear more about it, I put together about a 90-minute presentation where you can learn more details about it. And the goal of my presentation is really to show you what the business is and help you identify, is this something you want to go further with and learn about or not? We have an educational course. If you say yes, if you say no, then I promise it's an interesting thing to know about. And if it's not for you, say, okay, that's not for me. And I think that's cool, as well as saying, hey, this is for me. I really get jazzed up about this and I want to learn more. So my staff set up a website, theriseofoveragestoday.com. You can go there, register, see the presentation, and you can take it from there. I think it's an interesting business. I think it's especially interesting because, again, you get to help people and make great money. And I think that's good business to me, is you're providing a great service of high value and you're making a great living yourself. That to me is the ideal type of business. Even like self-storage, you guys provide a safe, dry, clean place for people to store their things as long as they want. It's great. That's what it is. And I think any business where you're providing a valuable service is great. And that's what ours is. And again, it's the Rise of Overages Today. Very cool business for people who like to help people that are sort of down and out and make a great living. I think it's cool. So that's my 2 minutes on what we do.
Well, Bob, I know you have to run. Our time is at an end. So good to catch up with you. Appreciate that, and appreciate the offer. We will put a link in the show notes, and we will definitely have you back for round 2. So I would love that. Bob.
It's been great reconnecting. So I haven't talked for a while. So it's been wonderful. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. My pleasure, Bob. We'll see you soon. Take care.
Thanks. I'll see you soon. Got to run.
Hey gang, wait, 3 things before you leave. First, don't forget to subscribe to the Self Storage Podcast and turn on your notifications so you never miss another episode. And while you're there, please leave us a 5-star review if you like the show. Second, be sure to share your favorite episodes and more via Instagram, and don't forget to tag us. And lastly, head to the links in the show description and hit the follow and subscribe button on Twitter and Facebook to get a front row seat as we grow and scale our business and bring you along with us. Take care.